India clarifies on port curbs on import of certain Bangladeshi goods. Sources say government has restricted ready-made garment imports to just two ports, Kolkata and Nhava Sheva. It is a reciprocal move to Dhaka's trade barriers on Indian yarn and rice. We have with us Mithileshwar Thakur, Secretary General AEPC. Well, thank you, Mithileshwar, first of all, for joining us this evening. Let's begin by understanding this topic a bit. Well, when we talk about losses to Bangladesh, is there any quantification of the losses? How badly will it hurt, and what is the reason behind this?
Well, thank you for having me here. Well, we have not quantified the losses, but I think it will hit Bangladesh in multiple ways because there, the entire garment imports actually, a substantial part of this was through land ports. So much so that 76% of the garment imports into India from Bangladesh was through Petropol, land port alone. So you can see. So what will happen is that it will kind of restrict to a great extent the market access of Bangladesh RMG imports into India. That's one. Second is that it will create a lot of inconvenience to them because the trade through land port was more about convenience than cost. It was basically to facilitate quick cross-border trade, and of course it will increase the transit time, which will have its own telling effect.
Okay, Mithileshwar, and talking about overall impact it's going to have on India also. So will there be impact to India as well out of all these steps which have been taken?
No, I mean, you see, this is not what India has started. In fact, on 13th of April, Bangladesh imposed a whole lot of restriction on Indian exports of, yarn of all types, and then milk powder and all of that. And then they have imposed, restriction on export of rice. They introduced some kind of transit fee. So basically, some kind of trade barriers, were being foisted on India. And I think it's a very calibrated and major response that India was required to do, which the government has done.
Also, Mr. Thakur, is there a way China can come here and help out Bangladesh to tide over the crisis?
Well, see, indirectly, I think they were already helping it because Bangladesh was importing, zero duty fabric from China, and then they were exporting it after, converting to garment and then availing all kinds of subsidy because Bangladesh being a least developed country, they were, allowed to give, cash incentives and prohibited subsidies. So they had a cost advantage over Indian manufacturers. And that's the reason I believe these H&Ms and Zara's and Uniqlo, they were sourcing their imports from Bangladesh.
And Mithileshwar, we also get to know that interim government of Bangladesh is seeking to resolve all issues with the Indian government on this issue. Well, after New Delhi put curbs on this particular commodity, so you think that it has come to a stage where Bangladesh wants a patch up with India, where it shouldn't hurt its biggest business out of the country?
That is what I also officially heard, and that's a welcome move. I think the both parties should sit together and resolve this crisis, rather than Bangladesh falling into the hands of China and show an obvious tilt and and play into the hands of China. In fact.
Well, that's a very valid point, Mr. Thakur, when you say all this, because ultimately global trade benefits everyone, but somewhere a line has to be drawn. But do you think this from here on, combined with previous steps we have taken, how far have we come when it comes to really severing ties with Bangladesh as far as trade is concerned?
See, Bangladesh, the SAFTA agreement, in fact, basically we were giving them duty-free access. So like the MFN duty on import of garment from other countries is 20%. And then on that, the cess is around 10%, which works out to around 22% plus IGST and all of that. So they were already enjoying duty-free access. So the bigger challenge is whether we can really go for renegotiation of SAFTA. But the point is that if Bangladesh comes on table and resolve this issue amicably, I think it should be more than welcome.
Right, Mr. Thakur, and thank you for joining me this evening to discuss these important points on that developing story.